That screen share.
Not even two days. Find a chair.
Here.
There's some chairs back here and there's plenty of room.
Tell me that you can see the first slide. Anyone online, can you see the slide that's up?
Yep. Yes.
Hey, we're working well. Okay. So, I've been watching quite a bit about what people say is a good reason to have a buyer's agent. And I've not seen anything that is wrong. I just think we have a chance to be more right. So I want to kind of walk you through my thinking on this, why I came to that conclusion. I'm going to show you what some of the other people have done. I'm going to let you guys tell me, do you know what buyers want? Or do you think you know? And let's see how we're going to show your value at the end of the day. But we're going to start with this. I don't know how many of you have seen the letter or the letters. FHA, Freddie, and Fannie have defined that buyer agent fees currently will not count against the concession percentage on their loans. Let me make sure I understand that. If I've got a 3% cap on an FHA loan that is a buyer concession, and the buyer agrees to pay the buyer agent compensation, that compensation will not count against the cap. The reason that is currently is because traditionally buyer agent fees are paid by the sellers. That's what's been going on. Now, if that starts changing, they will remove them from the camp. But currently, as long as we all play nice in your MLS in your area, if it is customary for the buyer agent fee to be paid on as a concession from the seller, that can continue and not affect the loan. I tried to explain that plainly, and it's hard. Do you have any questions on that?
So if the buyer had to pay it, it affects the loan.
The buyer affects, then it affects the loan because it's on the buyer side of the
Right. If the
transaction.
seller does it, it doesn't.
That's correct.
What? Now I'm confused.
Okay. You
That's why I
can't
repeated, but
finance the buyer agent fee if it's on the buyer side of the transaction.
The buyer can't pay it.
But if it's a seller concession and that it shows up on the seller side of the
Okay.
transaction,
Like it's been doing.
then you don't have to do it. Hi,
Okay.
Chris.
You're great.
So I could play this little audio down here, but I didn't switch something on right. The bottom line is the guy's telling us that we don't sell homes, buyers buy homes. And that's a real basic concept that we have to get. They're in the market to buy a home, and if you're trying to sell them something they don't want, they aren't gonna buy it.
Right.
So I'm gonna ask you guys, and I'm gonna try a whiteboard, God love me if I can get this done. Screen sharing. I want to add a new share. I want to do a whiteboard. Share. And if you guys can't type on this, then what I'm gonna do is when you shout out something, I'm gonna type it up here. And Tracy's gonna write it on the board. So my question is, what do you think a buyer is looking for from a buyer agent? In priority,
What, can we just shout them out and then prioritize them?
shout them out.
Okay,
Knowledge of the process.
knowledge.
Knowledge of process. This is participation time, Tamika. Lance, what did you say? Okay. Communication, okay?
Communication.
Another communication.
think that's the number one.
Trust.
Trust,
Sincerity.
sincerity,
Integrity.
integrity. Guidance, I like that word.
Protection.
Protection,
Advocacy.
advocacy, I'm missing the last one.
Information.
Information, okay,
Being available.
being available,
Answering your phone.
What about resources? Did we say that?
No.
resources, okay.
I know a guy.
I know, guys.
I know a gal that says she knows a guy, she's got the Lynette Mafia to help you out.
I don't agree with you. I got them.
Okay, guys, stay participating.
Focus.
We got a whole list up there. We have knowledge of process, communication, trust, sincerity, integrity, guidance, protection, advocacy, information, accessibility, and resource. Do we want to add anything else?
I mean, representation.
Representation, we'll take that.
I think a lot of those on the board fall under representation.
Good point.
True.
Right. I think they all kind of work together. Yes.
Absolutely, they work together. Okay, let me see if I can return to my presentation now and show you how you're all wrong.
Sorry, I've seen this. I knew it was coming.
Yeah,
So we've been doing this all wrong for years.
no,
Thanks, Greg.
you're wrong. No, the fact is, nobody's doing anything wrong. The premise is, we can do it better. So,
Buyers want a house.
from the 2023 NAR survey of home sellers and home buyers, which comes out every year. The number one thing that 8 buyers said they wanted was help finding the home.
Ding, ding, ding.
And none of us said help finding the home.
I just did.
So the premise of where I'm going with all this is, we gotta see it from the other side a little bit before we know what we're gonna tell people. Would you all agree?
Yes.
Okay, look at number 2 and number 3. Negotiate terms and negotiate price. Frankly, I didn't think it'd be quite that high, but I'm impressed that the buyers are smart enough to say, I want to find my home and then I want to decide how I'm going to get it. Those are important things. Now then, after the sale, this is what buyers said they received from their buyer agent. They understood the process thoroughly. They found out features and faults in the homes. List of service providers, negotiate terms and prices. And I'm saying through all of those, none of those are wrong. All of them are good. But I go back to what they said they wanted, which was help finding the home. You might hear that a couple of times today. So then I compared the 2 graphs. Buyers up front didn't think they needed to understand the process. Now, do they need to understand the process? Absolutely. But when you are getting your initial value proposition, I suggest you shouldn't be selling understanding the process up front. You need to be selling what the buyers are looking for initially, which is how to find a home. Any discussion or disagreement or, yeah, I like that,
Sherry.
Sherry?
9 times out of 10, the buyers are sending you what homes they found on Zillow that they want to pursue.
We will
So-
we will go around that in a
Or
minute.
whatever, wherever they found it.
But even if they did find them and they send them to you, they want help, according to survey, finding the home. So my point is, don't ignore that. Chris, you look at me with wonderment in your eyes.
It's more of a glance.
No comment? Okay.
Sorry, I forgot some of these.
He deals with you more than most of us.
So 59% of all buyers said the hardest part of purchasing a home was finding a home. 59%, that's the hardest part. 38% said, first time buyers said the process was the most difficult. So when we look at these two things and how we're doing it, you also have to know your audience. If you got a brand new buyer who's never done it, you might want to delve into the process. If you're talking to somebody who's purchased a home before, for them, let's delve into the finding them a home. People in Wichita know I love my statistics. So I'm going to ask you this question, and we can shout out the answers again. I don't think we'll do the whiteboard. We'll just shout them out.
You want me to write them?
Yeah, on board. What do you think buyers said the most important thing they look for when picking a buyer agent?
Experience.
Experience, Lamb said.
My experience is just answering your phone.
Answering your
that's another
phone.
thing.
Availability.
A full-time agent.
A full
Engagement with the buyer.
engagement with the buyer. We got anybody answers in Topeka on that one?
Communication,
Communication,
quick response.
quick response,
I think they look for trustworthiness.
trustworthiness, I like that. Everybody's shy now because I told them last time they were all wrong.
Relatability.
Relatability? That's a very
That's
good one,
important.
actually. It's tremendous.
Market knowledge.
Market knowledge, good one.
How about they look up reviews?
Reviews, very good. Testimonials, reviews.
I think right place, right time, like a house where your ad happens to come up when they're.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand that last one.
Right place, right time.
Right.
For
Right
example,
place, right time. Hello, Angela. Well, we're kind of, what's that show where they say survey says? Should we look at the survey now?
Yeah.
Actually,
Family Feud.
Family Feud. Here's one stat I want to share with you before we look at the other one. 71% of buyers interview one agent. One. So where do we want to be in the stack? Third? No. We want to be first. That means your elevator speech, which I hate that term, needs to be darn good. You want to be the first one they interview. I think another question you should always ask, how did they find you? According to survey, experience is number one that they said was the most important factor when choosing an agent. Honesty was number two. Reputation. And then I was a little surprised and a little not surprised that family or friend, if they were a family or a friend, they would choose them as being one of the top considerations.
I will be honest.
And there's a
with you.
good question. How do you prove that you're honest or trustworthy or experienced?
They usually only do it once.
Testimonials. And I'm not saying that any of the other things aren't important. And I'm not saying there aren't important in what we do every day for our buyers. What I am saying is in your value proposition, you should get put in the door first. Shouldn't you address what they think they want first
Yes.
and then build on that? Yes, you can have food, Angela.
There's yogurts.
So then they said how they actually chose their buyer agent. The top one by far is they are referred to by a friend
Refred.
or they are a friend
Oh.
or shut up, or a relative. I need to have a spell checker before I go through these.
I thought that's what I was.
Yeah, we missed that one.
Higher.
I didn't get a look at it, so.
It's,
And then the most interesting stat all about, none of these surprised me outside of used previously. And I'm not saying any of these other forums aren't a good forum to get buyers and meet them and so on and do your value prop. But number one, you gotta take care of your past clients, your friends, your relatives.
are these national?
These are national.
This is surprising because everyone tells you that's your number one.
Social media?
Yeah.
Social media with no connection. That means you just open a page and start advertising. If you've got your own personal page, you're doing social media, that works. That's different. Any comments on the chart? Okay. So 75% of buyers at the end of the transaction said they would use and or recommend their agent. And yet only 13% went back and used the agent they had previously. Abby, you can't answer this. Any speculation on why it's so low at 13%?
Don't stay in contact with them.
You don't stay in contact.
Somebody knows 10 realtors.
But whose fault is you don't stay in contact?
Ours.
Well, that's something you can do
If they
to,
liked you enough, they'll call you back.
and if they really like you, 70% of them said they'd recommend them to a friend or relative between 1 and 4 times. Now, I think 4 times is like 33%, but you know, if they recommend you 4 times, great, that's fabulous.
Maybe give you a new chair at squeaking.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you go get the WD-40?
I'll try to quit rocking. I'm trying
You
to-
can rock, I just want you in a different chair.
No, I'll quit rocking.
Lucille.
Are there any questions about this chart?
I don't think you heard her.
He's talking.
So given the past that we kind of looked at, I started trying to figure out how we could differentiate from other people. And I'm sure that's got to be on our minds, but if I look at our lists up here, I could go through those and say, I've seen a lot of those in all kinds of places. See if I remembered my chart right. Does everybody know what a word cloud is? A word cloud is where you feed in paragraphs and it pulls out the biggest, most used phrases or words. And the larger the word, the more often that phrase was used. Sorry. They're picking on me up here.
Hang on, I can solve this.
100 agents on Facebook were asked the question, how will you differentiate yourself from other agents? I'm not talking about how you're going to say your best. How would you differentiate yourself from other agents? And in my humble opinion, if your differentiation is everything that says differentiates them, have you really stepped up your game or are you just playing ball with them?
What's scary about one word that I see that's popping out to me is over to the left, where it says free.
Which one? Yep. And it's, and again, I'm not saying that any of these are bad. They're all good. And they're all part of what we do as buyer agents. But when you're doing your initial value proposition, shouldn't we try to figure out what makes us a little step above the other people?
Yeah.
Okay, let me preface my next slide.
What is free manage account? Free manage account.
Amount.
Oh, those are three different words.
yeah.
Those are,
Okay.
yeah, different words.
different colors, different words. So local market knowledge and negotiate were the words that were used by most of the 100 people. Market knowledge came in third. Strong negotiation might be third, and then market knowledge fourth. But let's look at those for a minute. Let me do a disclaimer. The next slide, or what I think is the next slide, I took directly off the internet from a guy who was saying, this is what my company says differentiates us. I'm in no way slandering that company. I just took it to use it for this demonstration. Berkshire Hathaway had why hire a buyer agent. And this was on their Facebook page. I'll let you read those on your own. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with what they wrote up there. Some of them would be a little dry for my style. Some of them, but my style is a little more laid back than some of other people.
What every agent offers.
That's pretty much what every agent offers. Very good, Lynn, you're learning.
Ding, ding, ding.
I'm really spending a lot of time on this front end because I think it is, if you're gonna differentiate yourself, what does everybody offer? Let's look at the bottom part of their chart. Absolutely nothing wrong with the yes and no or what we do. But nowhere on this piece of paper did I see, we're gonna help you find the home you're looking for. So Angela, you're a commercial and a residential home.
Working on it,
You
yeah.
are.
I passed the test, I've been.
Yay.
Fix little one.
Yeah.
So-
Good for you.
Yeah.
Is a residential sell an emotional decision or a business decision?
Emotional.
I think it's more emotional for sure, because you're
Absolutely.
living in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I look down this list, I see nothing that appeals to me emotionally. And I think emotional should be where you're at on. Now, the very last item on there kind of hits me, but they didn't hit it well. A seller's agent will pass on whatever information they get to the seller about the buyer to enhance the seller's position. Well, let's look at that for a minute. This is a summary of the Kansas law. Why did I do a summary? Because there's, like 30 paragraphs and 4 pages of what a buyer's agent minimum requirements are. I don't think any of you will have a problem with understanding what that summary is trying to say. And yes, I'll share the slides later if you want. I think all of us should do those. And I think if you look back at the Berkshire Hathaway page we just had, a lot of those were represented up there very, very well. Again, nothing wrong with it. But let's look at that top one for a minute. Come on, let's look at the top. That top one is act in client's best interest. Now, as a summary and taking that right out of the law and trying to interpret it, this in and of itself is a fiduciary duty. This is what we owe the client as a fiduciary. However, Kansas law went a step further and made a statute that is expressed. This is our statutory duty. Statutory? And it says right at the top, a buyer and tenant agent shall not disclose any confidential information. And inversely, the seller, we can't disclose on the seller's confidential information. I like to use an analogy when I'm doing this. If I got a buyer that just won the lottery for $500,000 and they want to buy a home that's $250,000 and they want to negotiate down, should I tell the seller they just won the lottery? So
No.
no. And I like using analogies when I'm explaining that to my buyers as well.
Oh, they lost a lot.
I have a question. So I have some clients that are wanting post-closing to get
extra time to get moved out,
Okay,
because they're older and they have a son with special needs.
okay,
Would that be something I could say?
yes. With your client's permission.
Okay.
Yeah, with permission.
So let's jump into a little bit what your actual buyer value proposition should be. Now, for those of you who know me, you know that I love Google Bard better than ChatGPT or whatever it's called now. Yeah. And so from Google Bard, they suggested that your value proposition should be two parts. Your elevator speech that you give up front to somebody, and I don't like the term elevator speech, I would say sparking a conversation,
Piquing the interest.
Yes.
seeking the interest, opening the conversation. And then if you can continue from there, you follow that up with your more value proposition talk track, which could go anywhere from 2 to 20 minutes. And I love the analogy they came up with. Think of your value proposition as a movie trailer. If I'm at home watching it on TV, it's about 30 seconds and I go, oh, I want to see that. But if you look for the full trailer or you're sitting in a movie theater, you're like 3 to 4 minutes. So the first part gets me excited enough to look at the second part. And note at the very bottom, your value prop is not your presentation. To me, this is what you ought to be doing to get to the presentation. If I've met a stranger and I want to get them to a buyer presentation, I don't start out rolling all the paper in front. I need to start conversing with him and build to that. So, where do you start? Well, to me, if they're telling me they want help finding the home, negotiate terms and prices, that's where I ought to be talking to. Negotiate terms and prices, you can bring up examples of how you've done things. We're going to look at finding the home in just a minute. No, my video, sorry. So how do we get inside their head? And now we're going to play time on the board for a minute. Yes, that's you, Tracy. How would you guys answer the question? I'm sitting at dinner someplace and I'm eating with my friends and they say, why do I need a buyer's agent? Where are you going to start?
When you tell them the seller's agent is representing the seller, they're not representing you.
That's not bad.
For protection.
For protection, I can protect you.
I can find you the property you are needing.
Ooh, I like that. I can find you the property you're looking for.
And that's the agent.
If you think it's challenging for us, how challenging do you think it is for them?
True.
I had my first buyer bring up the lawsuit the other day and he said that he didn't need a buyer agent. Because with the lawsuit, he was just gonna go to the seller directly and negotiate a better deal. Okay, well, he's back this morning, he said, no one answers our phone.
Yep.
Can you represent me on just this?
Well, and I've heard a lot of things. No one answers their phone. I've been starting to see Facebook posts of houses that are coming soon from realtor to realtor. I've seen realtor to realtor right in there. I have a buyer looking for, does anyone have something coming up? Are the buyers and sellers privy to that?
Nope.
Do I think it's 100% right? Not under the current MLS rules, but the current MLS rules are changing. And nothing about what I just said is against state law. Why do I need a buyer's agent? Does anybody else have an answer? Yeah, Topeka, that means you.
So you make all material facts on a property, so they're not buying a crap hole.
Material facts, I like that.
negotiate repairs.
I think part of it is that you have to know how to negotiate, and a lot of times buyers on their own don't know how to negotiate or understand what the art of negotiation looks like.
Absolutely, they don't know.
I think the buyers, they're so emotionally wrapped up that they want the house so bad that they don't negotiate.
And the sellers are emotionally involved too. That's why they hire agents, somebody to represent them without passion. We all know real estate agents are without passion, right?
I think tying in with the negotiations, we bring to the table different ways to negotiate. Like, do we negotiate the terms? Is it, are we gonna reduce the price in lieu of repairs? Are we gonna get the repairs done? When are we gonna get the repairs done? Before or after closing, et cetera, et cetera. So
Give them all their options.
we bring, it would be, like she said, options would be,
Enlighten all the options.
yeah.
How about this one? In answer to Elena's, I'm gonna negotiate my own. Oh, really? You're gonna negotiate a 15-year agent who knows this as a profession versus you that what does it every 10 years? Are you building yourself the strongest negotiation that you can get?
Well, I asked him, I said, do you know, I mean, like, I kind of started basic, like, do you even know what kind of loan you're qualified for? And, which I already knew, but he didn't know. And I said, well, how are you gonna find the homes that are listed for what you're qualified for? Like, they don't announce that on Zillow and those kind of things, so.
And so again, where you started with, we need to find you the right home that fits your budget and everything, and not all of them are available. But we also need to know what your budget is. We're building from what they said they need help with.
And we have all the resources to schedule the appointment, to get into the lockbox. All that stuff,
But
like
they
that.
feel that some of them, like her client, felt like the sellers had that access, so they didn't.
And
Yeah.
you can get a hold of them.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I suggest that nothing that I'm bringing up here is something that you haven't or shouldn't have done in the past. Just that I think it's gonna be a lot more important going forward.
I don't think I'll ever forget the time that I had called several times an agent to set, this was before showing time even, so that's how old I am. But I called him several times to set up the appointment. He never answered. I was sitting in front of the house, the last ditch effort to get him on the phone to see if I can show it. He goes, oh, I thought you were a buyer. I don't work with buyers. Sorry, I didn't answer.
I had an agent call me from Florida, back when we were on East Central. She called 5 agents already. They never answered the phone. I answered the phone and she said, if you can answer 3 questions, you got the job. And I ended up with the listing in Lincoln Heights.
And you know, answering those 3 questions are mean you thought about what those questions could be in advance. Next slide.
I'll tell you, I had recently a seller that I thought I had lost to another agent, but I never saw it on the MLS, so I finally called her back. Because I had just assumed she'd gone with another agent. She said, I sold it myself to a neighbor. She said, and I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
They don't know, but they don't know.
Yes.
And I'll tell you this, I represented my own self years ago buying my house, and that was a huge mistake. I would never even do it again for myself.
Do you notice attorneys generally hire another attorney if they
Yes.
get drawn into court?
Yes.
They're smart.
Surgeons don't operate on their own either.
Oh, no, I know, guy took out his own. opinion.
Own family
I
members,
would
not themselves.
personally hire another agent to buy my personal home if I did.
So let's keep moving a little bit. So I asked Google Bard, again, it's my favorite. If the top 3 concerns before purchase, I know, these are what I think are the most important. What would they say go in these 3 areas? There is overlap. Finding a home takes market knowledge. You're gonna help them save time and effort. You're going to guide and support them. And you're gonna dig deep to find those homes that aren't so available on all the websites out there. You gotta have negotiating skills. You gotta have market knowledge. If the market's hot, you can't negotiate for a lot of price. There's still other things you can negotiate for. The market is slow as all get out. You can ask for the world. That's market knowledge. And negotiating the price much the same thing. And again, these are the top 3 concerns that buyers expressed that they needed help from before the purchase. Oh, yeah, we're getting pictures. So briefly, I'm just gonna compare buyer and seller agents. You guys mostly know this, but this could be part of your spiel. I work in your best interest to get you the property at the price you need. The seller is there only to get the home sold. Loyalty, who am I loyal to? I'm loyal to my buyer, no matter where he wants to look for houses. The seller is loyal to his seller and only has to sell what the seller has to sell. We know that you can pick them up at a buyer, but still, if I'm a buyer, unrepresented, and I'm walking into somebody's store, I liken this to a buyer agent is like a personal shopper. When I order from Dillon's and they go around and pick stuff up in there, you know, if I'm not careful and don't click the right box and they don't have my breakfast sandwiches, they'll pick the next best thing, which I don't like. They're selling what they've got in store. But a buyer agent doesn't have to stay with one store. Much like a used car salesman, I can sell what's on my lot. I can't sell everything that's not here. That's what a seller agent does. And using some analogies like that, it's going to reach your buyer a little bit better than some of the correct, but not as good hard facts that we've seen previously. So I said, okay, Bart, given everything that I've given you so far, what would you say the first 30 seconds ought to be? Now, for those of you that haven't used these a lot, you can say, well, that language is too lax for me. I want something more professional. I want something funnier. You can ask Bard to write this in the style of Robin Williams and it will do it for you. Or Shakespeare.
You're playing with AI.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering who's Bard?
But part of this is right up front, their first sentence, you know, outside of the questions, get an advocate and your own personal real estate bloodhound. I have covered 2 very important steps right there. The bloodhound is going to lead them into houses that aren't readily available. And then I go further, finding your dream home, fighting for your interests, negotiating aggressively. And I keep going down for the first 30 seconds or so.
Great, what if they want a Doberman instead of a blood?
Well, you can have a Doberman if you like.
She is a Doberman, man.
A pit bull.
Yeah, pit bull.
Negotiations, pit bull, finding a bloodhound. How's that? Any comments on this first 30 seconds right up front?
Well, I think a question would be, that's all great, but how are you gonna do it? How are you gonna find that home for me? If you, in my opinion, the MLS is like a car lot. The MLS is your inventory.
Come on the door, you wanna sell your house, you're gonna buy it.
And so how do you go, what makes you stand out above, beyond other buyer agents is what would you do to go beyond your car lot to find the perfect car?
Several suggestions. First is the MLS has coming soon as well as what's on the market. Another one is that we are in a variety of social media groups where they communicate that houses are getting ready to come or needs I need to fill for that aren't on those internet sites yet. And the internet sites often can run anywhere from, an hour to 24 hours behind what the MLS is. And we all know in 24 hours in this market, house will be gone.
Well, that's what I'm
So,
saying.
Lynn, here, I'm gonna jump in real quick. What I always tell people is that the MLS. I ask the buyer, where are you finding homes? Oh, we're looking at Zillow, TrulyRealtor.com, and then I'll let them know, did you realize that the MLS is where they're all getting their information? And I'm providing you with that access to direct information that is updated as soon as something has changed. And you have direct access, so we can shop there You don't have to go to all the different websites if you don't want to,
Why
because
does
it's
it
all
show
coming
the
from the
window?
MLS.
And let me go a step further on the MLS, could you ask them? How many filters does the MLS have that we can narrow down the home selection versus Zillow, which has how many bedrooms, price, maybe garages? We can start going into finished basement size of lot. Are the bedrooms upstairs? Are they downstairs? What covers the floor? What doesn't cover the floor?
That is, if they're
My
listed
answer.
correctly, cause
Right.
you know, houses I found. that
Homes are
weren't-
always listed corrected in the MLS. Never do we have a problem.
I always like to say it's a one-stop shop.
Yeah,
But the fact is, there are several things about the MLS, plus we have the social media. Plus, there are some MLSs, like the MLS in Kingman, there are a few houses in Wichita that are part of that MLS that aren't part of the MLS here. We can search those for people. We can look at for sale by owner sites as well for our clients. Again, we can look at those for them so they don't have to.
Well, I think an advantage that we have with Better Homes and Gardens is our pinpoint marketing. I think most agents miss the golden diamond nugget by not using target marketing.
I agree, and there are some people that would just flat out go to the target market and say, do you wanna sell your house? I got a buyer. And if you know the hot price and you know the hot type of homes or areas, you can do exactly that, you'll be telling them the truth.
I just feel like that gives us an edge, that we have that ability to.
We do have that edge.
That target marketing, and I think because it's not a common word or phrase used in real estate, if we as a group, you know, in our presentations, bring up the fact that we do the target marketing, that will allow us to stand a little bit ahead of the others. We're not just like everybody else.
That's nothing wrong with that, but I'm gonna keep going here because I don't wanna run everybody out of time. So that's your opening. After your opening, you would jump in here someplace. You might want to use part of what that first paragraph has, which talks about bidding wars, hidden fees, complex paperwork. And in this very competitive market, finding a home and getting you into it before it's sold, that's important. Again, we're going back to how do we help you find the home? I will send everybody the slides on this so you can get the, and I will let you read as much as you want. But the three-step process, I'm sorry, did somebody online say something?
it was me.
Oh, okay.
She was enjoying the
To me, the three-step process is we start at the beginning with our sparking interest conversation. We move into what our true value proposition is. And if we can keep them going, we'll get them to the buyer presentation. And we move through the stages of where they need to be. I'm gonna go to the next page. All of these things that we covered here, they kind of looked at as saying they wanted them in some fashion up front. But everything I've seen out there, and even our own list, we gotta hit the hardest, what they want first. That's not to say they don't need to be educated or carried on down the line, but what do they think they want? Deliver that and tell them what they really need. Those are two different things.
I think what hits home is that last line. Let me be your guide. You're not alone in this.
You're not alone. Let me be your guide. And I'll say the next to the last line is testimonials. Even if you're a brand new agent and you've sold 2 properties, you should have 1 testimonial out of those 2 properties. How many testimonials do you think people are gonna read if you're talking to them?
One.
There you go. Start and build. And have a testimonial or 2. One other thing I'll tell you that I got from Chris Snoffert, and I think this is this would be the kind of place you put this in. What value do I have? Let me tell you about the last 10 problems I solved for 8 people buying homes. things that would have killed the deal, things that they couldn't figure out how to do. Let me tell you about those 10 problems. I've just proven my worth.
Just bored him to death.
Save the seller from having to pay 20,000 for a sewer. Yep.
Okay, so I will say this about your value prop. It's smart to tell a story and use analogies. I'm gonna be like a bloodhound finding your home. I'm like your personal shopper. I'm gonna find those hidden gems. Use some of your real life experiences, your past buyer issues. And whatever you do, this is an emotional decision. You should frame everything around what's in it for them and how it will save them angst later on.
Bring tissues.
Tracy's crying.
I'm so moved.
So having said that,
Angela's a guru at this.
I'm gonna stop. Yes, she is. Sharing the screen. Yes,
I like to socialize.
She does. She has got that knack.
I am. Yep, nobody wrote anything in, which is good because I wasn't checking that all the way through. Does anybody have any comments, questions, input? Something important to share?
Bueller.
Bueller, yeah, no kidding. Did anybody find value out of all this or learn something that you didn't expect to learn?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
We learned.
You know, Greg, something I always have felt like when I was working with buyers, I'm not actively doing that anymore, but is the fact that buyers, when they call you and they don't know you, they just want to look at a property. And then when you start working with them, you'll hear them say, well, or past people you start interviewing, what didn't you like about your last experience? Well, I found my house and I did everything. So I think setting those expectations up front, like, guys, this is a collaboration and you have a job. So if you're unable, we're going to work together. If you find a house, if your friend finds a house, empower everybody. And then I'm going to be the one that helps. I'm going to be the feet on the ground and make sure you get in there timely. If you can't, we'll provide you everything type conversation. That makes sense?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And, you know, again, I see that as a twofold conversation. The first part of that could be in your elevator speech value prop. And the second part of it is when you get them to sit down with the buyer. And if somebody found their own house, I think we have to be ready to say, okay, you found it. Let me tell you why a buyer agent is important to you.
I just think you empower it so that doesn't become the objection or the reason they don't like you later type thing.
Fair enough.
I think also a lot of people have had at some time or another a bad experience with a salesperson, whether that be buying a car, buying a house. And I think that gives everybody that opportunity to wow somebody, you know, exceed their expectations, surprise them. And I think those are the opportunities that stick with people, get that seller or that buyer to call you back.
Absolutely. And again, I wasn't trying to be the be all end all of this. I'm trying to open eyes a little bit to no matter how you do it, we've got to address what they think is important. At least to get our foot in the door.
Well, I did have a win. I was having trouble finding a house for a referral that I received from Marie because she knew it was gonna be a challenge.
No, I just didn't have time.
No, we didn't. Anyway, I was having difficulty, so I mailed out 100 letters. I went in and created a list of homes that fit his criteria of sellers or of homes that haven't sold in over 5 years. And I mailed out 100 letters, and one of them did call and say, and had me come out, and I was actually able to do a listing presentation to them. And I followed up yesterday and said, and asked, okay, you know, what are your thoughts? And they said that they, if they can't sell it on their own, So I didn't convince them that they couldn't. But if they can't, they're going to call me. So even looking for my buyer, I was able to open doors for sellers.
So back to your question about how can I find homes better than my buyers can on the internet? I think you just answered that.
Yes, I was trying to say there is, I feel like most agents would not have done that. So that makes.
True.
That makes me more valuable. So, and that's what I was trying to share with all of you. In order to become more valuable, we've got to do something with the other stuff.
You're special.
Even knocking on the doors too.
Mentally.
I wasn't gonna go there.
In a certain neighborhood.
Are there any other questions or comments? Then I'm gonna stop the recording so that we can be open with our questions and comments.